Welcome to episode 6 entitled Healing Grace, the Delicate Dance of Forgiveness and Accountability. We are your hosts. I'm Jessica Pontu. This is my wonderful husband,
Philip Pontu.
And we are here to just create a space of transparency as it relates to all things marriage. We know that there's no guidebook to marriage, there's no playbook to marriage. And so there's on the job training, right? And so we try to create a space of transparency. We're super open about the things that we've gone through in our marriage, because ultimately we just want to see people enjoying marriages that feel as good on the inside as they look on the outside. And so we are all about being your own relationship goals. So what do you need to do? What changes do you need to make sure that you and your marriage is the goal? Right. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to talk about grace and forgiveness. And so, of course, whenever I introduce a topic, I always want to do what? Define the words, right? And so I actually was looking up different definitions of grace to try to figure out if I wanted to explain this to somebody, how can I explain it? Especially somebody who may not be a believer, right? Mm-hmm. So as Christians, we understand grace. But what does that mean to someone else? I know, right? That's a good point. Do we understand grace? And so grace essentially is a gift that one person offers to another in recognition and acknowledgement of their humanness. So because I know that you're human and that because you're human, you're capable of making a mistake. When you inevitably make a mistake, then I get to give you this gift of grace, which means I hit like redo. We're going to wipe the slate clean. We're going to act like that never happened. And we're going to move on. There's no consequence for grace, right? When you have grace, there's no consequence to what you did. It's like, you're human. You made a mistake. You didn't mean it. We're moving on, right? And so this is not to be abused. So it's not a safety net for being careless or impulsive, but it's just in place because I'm human, you're human, and sometimes because we're human, we're going to make a mistake.
Yeah, human error.
Forgiveness, on the other hand, is something that if I'm the one that's been offended, am able to give so that I can heal. Right. So this is something that you use to try to fix an act that has long-lasting consequences, right? So something that someone does, it's not small, it's not minor. It was hurtful, it was painful, and it has the potential to continue to hurt the relationship. So I offer forgiveness, so one, I can heal, two, that we can move forward. But there's also a consequence. Yeah. Just because someone has forgiven you doesn't mean that there's not a consequence to your behavior. Yeah. As opposed to grace. And this was really interesting to me because I didn't view grace as being without a consequence. That's something you kind of just blow. We don't act like that never happened. And so my first question for you is, when you think about grace and forgiveness and these two very different dynamics, do you feel like you see one being offered more than the other? Do you think that we're using them appropriately or that we're using them in a healthy way? When I say we, I mean married couples that you might know or see. Is there such thing as too much grace where we're excusing things that we shouldn't be excusing? Hey, Sheila.
What's up, Sheila? I just think it is based on the way you perceive either one. Perceive grace or perceive forgiveness. So for me, I believe that you have to give somebody grace before you could forgive them. Grace comes first, then forgiveness. I can't say definitively that one is exhausted more than the other. I do feel like sometimes we can, in our mind, tell ourselves that, especially if we are the ones who have wronged somebody, we tell ourselves like, I feel like you should forgive me, or just give me a break, like I'm going through a lot, you know. So I just think it's a circumstance by circumstance type of thing. And again, how you have perceived grace and forgiveness. Have you seen somebody offer grace often? Have you seen people being forgiven often for things they've done? So if you around that a lot, then yeah, you might be prone to forgive some things that, you know, you might need to, you know, kind of look at, or you might give grace in a situation, you know, where, or you might not give grace in a situation where grace may, you know what I'm saying, need to be extended. So it just depends on your lived experience, I think.
I think Nina made a good point. She said that we probably don't know the difference between grace and forgiveness, because before I looked it up, I didn't really think about them as being different. And so grace literally is, we're gonna act like this didn't happen.
Yeah.
Like you forgot to pick up my prescription.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not anything I'm gonna punish you for, or, you know, hold over your head. Like, you made a mistake. It was a human error. We gonna keep it moving. Whereas forgiveness is something that is egregious, right? That is hurtful, that is gonna stick with me, and we have to like rectify it. So I think that sometimes we as women can excuse things, and I'm just speaking because I'm a woman,
right,
that we can excuse things that don't need to be excused, that need to be addressed, that need to be like, it's a process. And I think that's where accountability comes in. I saw some about the Cowboys Sheila talking about, but I'm not even finna go there with you. I think she said they need a little grace. Hey y'all. So forgiveness versus right grace. So grace is like, you did something, you're human, we're gonna ignore it, we're gonna keep moving. I know you didn't mean it, you apologize, keep moving. Forgiveness is like, no, you hurt me. This, and there's a consequence for this hurt, but we're gonna move forward for healing, right?
Yeah, but it's also a consequence.
There's a consequence.
So moving forward, X, Y, and Z has to happen based on
right. Are you truly repentant, right, or remorseful? So accountability versus blame. So accountability is acknowledging your part in something, right? Acknowledging the impact of your behavior on someone, acknowledging and owning your stuff, right? So accountability, it builds trust between partners, and it focuses on the problem, not the person.
Right.
Its purpose is to improve the overall performance, not to punish anybody. Blame only has one goal, and that's to assign fault. This was your fault. It focuses on the person, and it focuses on punishment. So blame often has shame associated with it. And it's not productive, right? And so when I hold you accountable.
And I think, I think blame, another thing, blame is selfish.
Blame is selfish. Yeah. And so when I hold you accountable, I am ensuring that you meet the shared goals that we set at the quality that we said we would meet them.
Yeah.
And vice versa. I'm not saying, you know. But if I'm holding you accountable, I'm saying, look, we said we were going to do X, Y, Z in this way, and you're not.
Oh, you're into the bargain.
So what do we need to do for you to be held accountable? But my question is, because I feel like you often feel like when I'm trying to hold you accountable, I feel like you perceive it as me blaming you. Is that true sometimes?
Sometimes. No, yeah. I feel like when you are holding me accountable, is, I don't know if it may be the wrong time. I don't know. Is there a wrong time to hold somebody accountable?
So I'm gonna ask you, what does that feel like then? So like you think about accountability versus blame. What would it need to feel like for you? And this is as like I said, I really wanted the man to hear from you tonight. Like, what does it need to feel like for me to actually, for you to feel like I'm holding you accountable versus me blaming you or sending you into defense mode?
I think that if you always are, if it comes to a point where you always like pointing out specific things, not saying you per se, but just in general, if you always point out specific things and remember you said this, remember you said that, remember you're gonna do this, you know what I'm saying, and you don't really kind of look to like, hey, you remember the conversation we had, you remember that talk we had, you just putting it off on me, you know what I'm saying? I think that's an abuse of accountability more than anything. I don't think it's you're trying to blame a person, but I think you are overly using the excuse to hold somebody accountable to not really focus and hone in on yourself. So I think you can definitely use accountability without necessarily blaming a person. So I don't think in those moments you're trying to blame me, but I do feel like sometimes like you be overly using accountability.
How do you overly use accountability?
Again, because you remember you said this, you're supposed to do this, and without, what I'm saying, reflecting on the whole conversation on my part and your part, but just focusing on my part, forgetting that, what I'm saying, it was two sides to that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So we had a couple comments and they kind of go together because both of them are kind of highlighting that they're really like, regardless, even if you're holding someone accountable, they're going to become defensive. Like, how do you hold someone accountable without them becoming defensive? Like, what
I don't
would that
know.
look like?
I think it's just human nature, to feel attacked when somebody is bringing you something that, you know what I'm saying, like just holding the mirror up in your face. You know what I'm saying? I think that's just human nature, especially for men, because a lot of men are ego driven, just, you know what I'm saying, keeping it a buck, so you coming to me bringing me something about myself, like, who is you? Like, what you mean? Like, I'm him. You know what I'm saying? So in those moments, I think that I don't know. It's just touchy, man. I don't know if there is a specific thing you can do to kind of really bring something to somebody about themselves without them being not offended, but being, like uneasy about it. Now you can kind of try to disarm somebody.
Okay, what does that look like? Because Nina just asked. It's like tonality.
Tonality is definitely a big part of it. That is. Now I want to say that's probably 75% to 80% of it, because saying I need you to go do this, opposed to, hey, can you go do this real quick when you get time? You know what I'm saying? And navigating between that and this, you know what I'm saying, can make the difference between, yeah, I'll do it as soon as I get done with this, and be like, what? Who are you talking to? And then that's snowballing into something totally different. You know what I'm saying? And again, we grew up in the era, it's not about what you say, it's about how you say it. You know what I'm saying? Your tone, the way you come across a person will definitely either ignite them or shut them down.
Nina saying timing too.
Timing is definitely a part of it, because if I'm just coming in the door and you bringing me all this stuff,
that was 2 weeks
ago. Like, gee, like just
that was
like
2 weeks ago.
literally walked in the house, like, you know what I'm saying, give me a chance to, you know what I'm saying, like get my bearings together, catch my breath. And that's just men and women, you know what I'm saying, especially depending on the type of work you do every day, you know what I'm saying, high stress, low jobs, you know what I'm saying, when you come home, like them first 20, 30 minutes, man, be important.
Yeah, but then shoot, if I wait too long, you're gonna be asleep.
No.
I'm trying to get us in there.
Not necessarily, but that's why I said that's why I told you, like, if we gonna do something, you need to not be in the room, like be in the living room or the kitchen or something. Because if I'm in the room, I'm instantly gonna be like,
time to go to bed.
It's time to go to bed, or I'm gonna be really, really comfortable.
Okay, let's do something. This is I'm gonna throw this at you. This off script. We're gonna go off script for a minute. So we have all of these ways, right, that you can improve accountability. And I'm hearing some really good questions and some good points. You know, about tone, about timing, about at the end of the day, like if you are supposed to do something, you need to do it. Right. And so, but we understand that people have egos. We understand that people have triggers. We understand that people have all of these things. And so let's walk through one of our recent arguments. Using these strategies for improving accountability, and let's just reflect on what we could have done differently based on, you know, these strategies. So I'm gonna summarize the argument. It was super petty. Both of our arguments are super petty, because I be in my feelings about it. It don't take a lot to get me in my feelings, and once I'm there, it take a lot to get me out. And he's the same way. So we're very similar. We're very similar, right? We have similar grievances most of the time with each other. And so it's really hard for us to hear each other because we're usually saying the same thing and advocating for the same thing at the same time. So neither one of us can hear what each other is asking for. Let me tell you how petty this argument was, y'all. So y'all know that the egregious theft of a game between Dallas and Detroit that happened a few weeks ago, right? So people were making lots of memes and graphics, right? And so this one particular graphic that I'm in a group that makes AI photos. That's all the group does, right? So this graphic came through in the AI group that I'm in, and it was an image of the Detroit Lions lined up, the Detroit offense lined up against the Dallas defense, but in the middle of the defense line was a ref, right? So Phil was taking me to the grocery store, and he was driving, and I flipped the phone to him. I said, "Look," and he looked at me, and he was like, "Oh yeah, that's what it is, And so for me, it was dark. He was driving, like he didn't give it enough attention to have seen, in my opinion, what I was showing him. Right? It was such a quick glance. There's no way in my mind he could have seen it. So before I accused him of dismissing me, I was like, well, let me make sure he actually didn't see the photo. So I said, what did I just show you? What was that a picture of? So when I asked him that question, instead of saying, well, I ain't gonna do that because that's what we finna do, right? We're gonna correct it. So I asked him these questions, and so he started to play crazy, like, I don't know what you mean. And of course I know what it was. I said, well, tell me. Well, why are you asking me? Well, you told me to look. I told you I looked. So it really spiraled, right? So he started to play crazy, like, I'm confused. I don't know whatever could you mean? What do you mean? What did I see? So like I was asking him this big theological question and this philosophical, this super deep question. So him feeling a way that I asked him and questioned him the way that I did made him respond and play crazy. And so then I got upset and it just spiraled, right? It spiraled We was at a gas station. We was at grocery store parking lot for like an hour, 2 hours, at least an hour, talking about this, right? So the first strategy.
Hold on, wait. So we get to the strategy. First of all, I was not acting crazy and confused. The reason I'm like, what do you mean? You just showed me a picture. Like, what do I see? Like, I seen that. I said I seen the picture already. Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah.
I didn't just say, oh yeah. I said I seen that already. So she was like, well, what did you see? I'm like,
right.
What do you mean? Like, what you mean? What did I see? And when I finally said, I was like, it's a picture of the Lions against the refs.
It wasn't a picture of the Lions against the refs.
I'm gonna tell you what it was. It was a picture. What was it? It was one ref. It was one ref. They had the original picture was the Detroit offense again against a line of refs. They took out the rest of the refs and put one ref at center. And that's what it was. It's the same premise, but just one ref. So in my mind, I'm like, I'm not thinking like she talking about just the one ref. I'm like, it's the picture of the Lions against the Cowboys referees. Like, it's like, what do you mean? So now we can get to how we could.
You ready now?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm ready.
So to your point, Nina, I don't know if y'all have started the challenges, but the check-ins might be helpful for you. So setting aside a specific time that y'all check in with each other and then holding your stuff until that check-in time. And so for us, it happens about 7:30, between 7:30 and 7:45 after Phil has gotten home and he's had a chance to like use the bathroom or like rest or sit down. But we have a certain time between about 7:30, 7:45 where we check in. So I'm not dropping stuff on him as soon as he walks in the door. Like mentally, he's ready to receive it because he works 6 days, 12 hours, so his days are long. So I want to be really mindful of that when he comes home, that I'm still creating that environment of peace and harmony for him, and that I'm not, standing at the door waiting to unload all of this stuff. And he also understands that just because he works a lot doesn't mean that he does not still need to provide that space for me to process and talk and share. And so it's the check-in times work for us.
Yeah.
Yes. And so where we landed with our argument, we actually, I told him I didn't want to talk about it no more because it wasn't going anywhere. Hey, Dr. C. But I felt dismissed, right? In that moment, I felt dismissed by him. That because he had already seen it or felt like he had already seen it, he did not give me in that moment any type of attention or validation that I was looking for. And I felt like he had just brushed me off and dismissed me. Where he felt, how did you feel?
So that wasn't even like the original issue. Like she was just, because we had left the house already. We had another disagreement before we left the house. So she was just, I told her like, it was for me like, just, she tell me all the time, just tell me what you want to know or ask me the question, like don't beat around the bush.
I said, tell me what you was feeling in that moment.
I'm telling people what I was feeling. What I'm saying is, I have to preface my statement. But again, she's big on just be direct.
You see me?
Be direct. So I'm like, all right. So in that moment, for me, she wasn't being direct. Like after about the third or fourth time, like I was like, oh, this is something else. So now I'm like, well, be direct. Tell me what you want. What you asking me? Like, what are you asking me? Why? How did we get here about a picture? So that's how I felt like she was.
That I wasn't being direct.
Yeah, that you weren't being direct and that you were picking.
You felt like I was picking.
Yes.
So in response, you did what?
I wasn't very forthcoming with trying to, I guess, diffuse the situation. Mm. So, it went on longer than it needed to.
Okay. So I put the link for the date night guide in there. I was trying to pin it on my. Let me see if I can pin it. Oh yeah, I'll pin it right there. So the first strategy for improving your accountability is to self-assess. Mm-hmm. So the more that you increase your own self-awareness, so you can know how and why you are showing up the way that you are, the better the outcome for everybody. And so in that moment, I didn't realize I felt dismissed, because had I realized that, I could have said, "Well, dang, baby, I felt that was kind of rude," and maybe that would have given you a different way to respond to me instead of the way that we went.
Yeah.
What about you? Not I agree.
Again, I could have definitely diffused the situation by just, answering the question and, figure out what it is, seek feedback, pretty much. Like, why are you, asking me this? Like, I feel like there is something else behind this question. Like, what is the real question that you want to know? You know what I'm saying? Why are we going this way about it? Yeah. So, just kind of break that down and start really working to the real issue and get some feedback on what it is that she's feeling in that moment.
So seek feedback is another strategy for improving your accountability. So don't just seek feedback from your partner. Seek feedback from wise counsel around you. Mm-hmm. Like, tell them what happened. Tell them your side of the story. Tell them, your partner's side of the story. Ask them, somebody who's has wisdom and who's objective. Like, what do you think? Because sometimes we see ourselves differently from other people see us. And if we ask for feedback, a lot of times people will give us feedback, but we have to be open to receiving it too. But this is something I tell dating women who are dating, who are looking to get married. I always ask them, the person you're dating, do they have strong male accountability? This is so important. If you are dating a man or a woman who are surrounded by people, or they associate regularly with people who do not hold them accountable and who do not have the same standards as you do, that is going to be a problem. I know the saying, what do they always say? People feel like, I can hang with this person and they don't make me, or they don't change me, or whatever. But birds of a feather really do flock together. And either you're going to change that person or they're going to change you. But somebody's going to change. And so you can either be changing for the better. We just had this conversation with our son. Mm-hmm. Or you're going to be changing for the worse. But you are the average of the 5 closest people you spend the most time with. You become the sum average of the 5 closest people you spend the most time with. And so if you're dating somebody and they're hanging out with men who cheat on their wives, or who, have just very different standards and expectations for their behavior, that is going to be a problem in your relationship one day or another. Yeah. And so if you, and this is probably the first piece of advice I give when a woman says, I got this guy, I like him, I say, who is around him? Who is he listening to? Who can he go to for counsel? Does he have a good relationship with a solid pastor? What does his father say? What's his father's like? His uncles, his best friends, right? This is your accountability group. And if you are around people who are okay with your behavior, regardless of what you're doing, it's not going to end well for your relationship, because all of those bad habits and toxic ideas are going to seep into your relationship one way or another.
Yeah.
Yes. You are who you hang around. Absolutely. So seek that feedback. What patterns, cycles, this is another good question, even for us. What patterns, cycles, behaviors have we internalized as normal? So I grew up watching people fight. That was normal behavior for me. Arguing, fighting, big, really big emotions, just intensity, like everything was just over the top. Um, and so it what it created in me was it made me not like confrontation.
Yeah.
And so it made me passive aggressive and until a point, and then I'm exploding.
Yeah.
So I'm tucking it away because I don't want the confrontation, and I'm being passive aggressive until I can't take it anymore, and then the top is off. And so learning how to like seek feedback about talking to other couples about what their relationship look like, or about how they fight, or about what they do in these different circumstances to show you like that might not be normal. It might feel normal.
Yeah.
But just because that was your experience doesn't mean that that's everybody's experience. So even, hanging out with couples who you admire, who have these qualities that you look up to, those things are important to seeking feedback. So feedback doesn't have to be directly like, hey, tell me about myself. Observation gives you feedback.
I'm an observer, definitely. When I walk into a room, I look around and see who's in here, what's going on, like exits and things like that. And when it comes to people, though, that is definitely undervalued. I don't want to say skill, but tool. Just sit back and observe people and watch. You know what I'm saying? How they move around the room and how they talk to people, and when they're talking, their body language, eye contact, manner, like that is really undervalued because you can really see a lot about a person. But I know one thing that contributed for me to some of my behaviors was the lack of male affirmation and emotional modeling. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't see a lot of that from men, like showing affection to their spouses often. And I didn't hear a lot of, great job and good job, you did wonderful, I'm proud of you growing up. So when I got older, you know what I'm saying, like I didn't show her the emotional, connection or the emotional affirmation that she needed as my spouse, like just holding hands or, walking through the house on there and like just, doing stuff that makes them feel like you see them, they're wanted. Like I didn't see that growing up a lot. So, that's something that was a big I guess something was a big find, I guess, for therapy when I was in therapy, and my therapist had, we had unearthed that. So, yeah,
dug that up.
Yeah.
Another thing that's big when you're in this process of like trying to improve your accountability, hey y'all, is not to overcommit. So you want to set goals, right? And so I think we ended the conversation when we did talk. It was like trying to be more mindful of our emotions, like in the moment, and then communicating that.
Yeah.
So taking a beat, right, and being like, "Oh, I feel away. What's this feeling I feel? Something don't feel right." And I felt like he had dismissed me. If I would have taken a beat and been like, "Oh, I felt something. What was that?" Right? And try to put a name, right? Do that self-assessment before going to him, really going in here. So now my goal is to be more aware and mindful instead of questioning him and trying to like get this answer myself. I'm just communicating back.
Yeah, I think that just goes back to really just, like before you say anything, just stop and think, what I'm saying, about what was said, how it made, like just stop and think. Don't say nothing, just really, Because I know sometimes you look at me real funny when we having a conversation and you done said a lot, and I just sit there like I'm processing, but you know what I'm saying? Like I'm replaying the whole conversation, and you know what was said, and when she was saying certain stuff, what did I feel, and
yeah.
you know what did I want to say versus, you know what I'm saying, what can I say or what should I say? Like just really just stop and really just think about, you know what I'm saying, everything, your feelings, you know, your thoughts, and then, you know, take your time. Don't just try to blurt it out, you know what I'm saying? Just take your time, breathe, and then start talking. Like, I think we really just rush to get stuff out, you know what I'm saying, at the moment, and maybe because we feel like we're going to forget. But if it's really important, like, I don't think you'll forget, you know, because just blurting it out, some other things going to come out with what you mean to say also, and it might lead to something else, you know.
But you don't want to. You want to make your goals realistic. You don't want to overcommit, and that means like if I say, "Oh, every time I have a feeling, and every single time, or when I come home every day for the next 3 weeks, I'm gonna do this," right? And so you overcommit and trying to give your partner what you think they want, and so. I'm glad you can acknowledge that. So you were a big overcommitter of like, yeah, I'm gonna take you out and wine and dine you for 3 weeks straight. And I'm like, that's not feasible. Because what that does is it creates opportunity for you to let that person down.
Yeah.
And so the whole reason we're having this conversation about accountability is because something has been breached, right? The contract has been breached. You've not done something that you were supposed to do. And then when I bring it to you, your response is, I'm going to do that and like all this other stuff. Nah, you just need to do this first. And then, like, let's master this. And once we get this, we can talk about all these other things. But when you overcommit yourself, one, it doesn't feel genuine. Right? It just feels like you're just telling me something. And then when you let me down, now trust is being eroded because you're telling me something and you're not coming through. It's so important when you're building accountability to be a man or woman of your word and somebody your partner can believe when they tell you that I'm going to be better, I'm going to do better, that they can trust you.
Because a lot of times, especially when you're, you know, building back trust, what happens is not only, you know what I'm saying, does it, you know, affirm the distrust that they may still have, you know, it starts to snowball into resentment. Like, you know what, I knew you know, and all these other things.
My mama told me
about your platinum. But like, it really is, and that's something I had to learn because that was me. Like I would, you know, have and I was, you know, really serious when I would say some of the stuff, but not realizing like, is that really realistic?
Yeah.
Like, am I being realistic? And like, I mean well, but again, you know, you have to stay within your means and be realistic about the things that you're trying to do, building back trust, you know, because of the simple fact you can mean well all you want, but at the same time, you're not building trust, you know, you're making it hard to, you know, get back to that place that y'all working towards.
So, no dirty dancing. So, we're talking about the dance of forgiveness and accountability. So, it really all has to go together. So, you have this metaphor about dancing as it relates to accountability. You tell the people about it.
You know, you know, hitting below the belt, you know,
this your metaphor. What you looking up again for?
you know, she definitely
Hey Tam.
Huh? Yeah, what you mean, huh?
Oh no, we gonna have to come back because I wanted you to just explain your metaphor. You talk about me.
All right. No, but I mean, you know, you got to go into detail about what use examples. But anywho, play fair.
You want to talk about it though?
What?
You talk about when I bring up like old stuff when we're having conversations about something that's happening now?
Yeah, I mean all that.
I don't agree with that though.
No, but I'm saying, why not though?
Okay, so pause. Put a pin in that. We're gonna come back. So, part of accountability, y'all can feel free to share y'all insight, if you have any. But Phil is a creature of habit. So there are certain patterns that when he would exhibit them in the past would often yield the same outcome, right? And so the pattern was so, it was so crisp that I could call it out and say, oh, y'all know your man. If he has certain patterns or certain behaviors or certain things that you like, oh, he on some bull stuff today. Yeah, because when you be on bull stuff, you be ABC and you ABC, and so you on some bull stuff. So in the process of us trying to get to this place of healing, he'd AB, and I'd be like, hold on, you AB, I know what come after B, C come after B, because this is what your behavior has shown me in the past. And he would feel like I was not allowing him to grow and be this new person and show me that he's changed, but I hadn't yet seen that full transformation. Right?
I ain't talking about that.
What you talking about?
I'm talking about when we having an issue and we are in a discussion, like ain't no bringing up the past, like, oh yeah, that's that, like that one time when you X, Y, and Z, or you know what I'm saying, like no bringing up the past. I ain't talking about that. Like, I mean, that's understandable, you know.
Right.
That's just, that's like triggering.
Yeah. You know so you said don't play the blame game of just like last time when you
dirty fighting, like hitting below the belt, like just like when you know what I'm saying, like not saying you did it, I'm just saying
that sound like you though.
No.
No.
I
do that a lot.
No, I don't. Like what I do what a lot? What I do a lot?
When I bring up something and you be like, well, you did that to me last week.
I can say I did it recently. I can't say I do it a lot though. A lot is
you do it more than I do.
No.
You do it more than I do. Okay,
anywho,
we're gonna take accountability for our stuff.
Yeah. I just said I can say I did it all recently. Once or twice. And in the no dirty dancing category is we use I statements. Ain't no absolute like you always or every time, we say I feel or I think, you know what I'm saying, just bringing it back to us instead of, again, trying to defuse and disarm our spouse in that moment so they don't feel like we're attacking them, But a lot of times, depending on what y'all have an issue about, it can get heated. So that right there is very important, especially for us, because she got a mouth. And
who, me?
You
so we focus on the problem and not the person. Yeah. So using I statements helps you to focus on the problem and not the person. But I do want to ask you this from a man. Yes, Ava, from a man's perspective, right? So we're talking about grace, we're talking about forgiveness, we're talking about accountability. And Crystal made a post that's been getting a lot of traffic. So I want to pull you in. She has her Contrary to Popular Belief podcast that she's getting ready to launch. What should someone do if they have a partner, right, who out of their mouth accepts accountability, but behavior doesn't change, right? And so one spouse is suffering right, for years, and that the other spouse isn't changing, at what point do we say, and I don't even know if you feel comfortable even saying that there's a certain point, but when is enough enough? You know, when it comes to accountability, how much I know the Bible say we're supposed to, but it's not grace, because grace says we're cleaning the slate. It never happened. So that's why I defined it before we started. So this is forgiveness, right? With consequences, though, right? So forgiveness has to have a consequence. You can't just say I forgive you and there's no consequence. And I think that maybe I answered my own question. If you are forgiving the person, but there's no real consequence, because consequence is supposed to change behavior. And this is what I tell teachers all the time, even parents. If you have a child that is misbehaving and you employ a consequence and that behavior doesn't change, that consequence didn't work. It didn't work, because consequences are supposed to change behavior. They are a motivating factor in behavior. And so if you whoop that child and that child do the same thing, that whooping, they don't care about the whooping. You got to figure out something else. You got to be creative. We can't keep suspending children at school and thinking that it's enough if the kid keep doing what they're not supposed to do, because it's not a consequence that they care about. Right. So what does that look like in a relationship where one partner continues to breach the trust and the behavior doesn't change? Is it the consequence isn't working? Is it the consequence not what's
like I said
enough?
Like I said earlier when we were talking about grace and forgiveness, grace comes before forgiveness. So even before you get to forgiveness to issue a consequence, you've given grace. You know what? You're human. You don't forget about that. And then the next time it's forgiveness. Now it's a consequence behind said action. And then something else happens. Then you give some more grace. And then it's a cycle. So before you could get to forgiveness, there's grace. But if you stop giving grace, ain't no more forgiveness, and then no more consequence. Your consequence ain't working, so I ain't got no more grace for you. So what do? That is really something that you already know, in my opinion, but you're just not ready to do. So a conversation I had with my sister, and I told her, I was like, until you have had enough, you're going to continue to go in this cycle. When you had enough and you are ready to stop the cycle, and you're ready to, you know what? I don't want to deal with this no more. I ain't got to deal with this no more. What am I doing? You know what I'm saying? Now you start thinking about, okay, what needs to happen next? And it's not going to be, and you're going to know when it's that point, because everything is going to feel different. You're not worried about certain things that you were worried about before. You're not thinking about, okay, how are they going to feel? Because 9 times out of 10, in those situations, you often worry about their feelings too. That ain't going to matter what they feel like. It's all about, I need to fix this because I don't want to feel the same way over and over again. So I don't know exactly, what you should do, but you do.
Right.
That's all on you, honestly.
I feel like you what you said holds a lot of value. Right? A lot of times, and I'm not necessarily saying that you leave. I'm saying if the consequence is not a motivating factor, the behavior is not changing. That doesn't mean I'm leaving you necessarily, but what boundaries are in place, what am I doing to, I forgive you, but then what am I doing to also protect myself in the process? If you still can just continue to do and have and be without consequence, there's no what I'm changing for, and I feel like, and I just want to highlight that, forgiveness is not an excuse for the behavior. I can forgive you, but there is still a consequence to your choice. Yeah. Grace, there's no consequence. Grace is like, you made a mistake, but at some point, a mistake becomes a choice. And so I can't keep ignoring what your choices and calling it grace. Yeah. Now I'm participating in this cycle because I'm not putting in any boundaries in place, and I'm not causing you to be accountable with your consequence. Yeah. So sometimes our consequences for behavior does not phase it. So for me, I feel like that kind of supports what I said. So like for example, if I'm suspending a child and he continues to act up, now I realize that the suspensions don't deter the behavior. So now I need to find out, you want to go home, right? Mm-hmm. Because if I'm suspending you and you are continuing to misbehave, that means you don't want to be at school. Because if you wanted to be at school, a suspension would deter the bad behavior. So now I need to find out what's really going on. Why you don't want to be at school? Mm-hmm. So now that I'm finding out what is motivating your behavior, I can come up with a consequence that works for you. PJ don't care about nothing corporal punishment. He don't care about no whooping. He don't care about no holding no books above his head. He don't care about nothing that has to do with pain. But baby, if you take his money or his freedom, he gonna act right every time because that's what he cares about. And so for us, I know one consequence, well, it was a boundary, right? So a consequence could be a boundary. So for me, it was like, oh, I'm not doing this unless you get into therapy. So if I'm not going to stay in this marriage and you're not in therapy, period. A boundary, right? That's the consequence. The consequence is now we have this additional boundary that you now have to navigate. You want this marriage, then you need to do ABC. And if you don't, I'm telling you, I'm leaving. Mm-hmm. Period. Right? So now it's not just about, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. And I'm willing to show you that I'm sorry because I'm now going to navigate this new boundary that exists because of my behavior. Because I have this was a consequence of my behavior. The consequence was, I don't want y'all to hear consequence and think I'm saying like, I'm a parent and you're bad and this is not what I'm going to do. No, the consequence is the result of the action. Mm. The result of the action is now this new boundary that's in place that I don't want to do this unless we're in therapy. I can't. For my own self, I can't do this unless we're in therapy. That's the consequence of the action, right? Consequence of me having to let go of certain places, people, things that he was no longer okay with. That was a consequence. So no, I can't do this live streaming while all these people watching me and and you so woo. That's a consequence of my action because I didn't have boundaries in place to make sure that he felt comfortable. So now the consequence is you got to get off. You got to let it go. That's a consequence because it was the result of an action, my action.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm a firm believer in, just putting everything out there and just having a real raw conversation. And she can attest to this. Like sometimes, and I believe marriage is a beautiful institution. and it's created for everybody. But what I don't believe that you should just be somewhere just for the sake of being there. And that sometimes that requires you sitting down and be like, hey, we need to talk. Like, come sit right here. Let me sit right here. What do you want to do? Why are you here? What are we doing? Is we gonna do this or is we gonna do this? Is we finished or is we done? Like it just has to be that, because until you really think about what it is that you're trying to do with your marriage, like it can keep going. That cycle can continue, but that conversation like has to happen at some point. Like, listen, we just need to sit down and do one question: do you still want to be married?
Man, listen.
That's it. Ain't nothing else to talk about. That's the one question we need to really think about right now.
Absolutely.
Do you want to be married?
What do you want? That was the first. Carla, I see your question, love. That was the first question my therapist asked me. She was like, what do you want? Do you want your marriage? I said yes. So now every choice, everything came back to what I said I wanted. Mm-hmm. So based on what you said you want, is this putting you closer to that goal or further away? And then it was up to me to make the choice. Yeah. Because I had to clarify in my mind, what do I want? And some people, if they actually sat down and asked themselves that question, they might not walk away with that answer. But like I said, just like the kid that's being suspended, you have to get to the root of where this behavior is coming from. Maybe the behavior is being motivated because you really don't want to be there. Mm-hmm. And you are telling yourself, because of society or because of outside pressure or because of all this other stuff, that I want this. Ego. But your behavior is the complete opposite. Mm-hmm. There needs to be some reconciliation, some accountability, because if I get into my mind and I clarify in my heart, Lord, this is what I want, this is what you want from me, and I come into alignment with that, then the behavior has to line up. If it's not, and there's nothing mentally wrong, right? That's why I said sometimes we ought to go get some help, because we can have some blocks mentally, psychologically, that's keeping us from lining that stuff up. But if I'm whole in my mind and my behavior continues to be against what I say that I want, some it's a lie somewhere operating, and you got to root it out. You got to find it. Where's the lie operating? Because if this is what I want, but this is what I'm doing, I'm lying to myself somewhere, and I'm lying to my partner.
Yeah, I mean, and it could go back as far as your childhood. A lot of the stuff that I had to get to the root of came from my childhood. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't even know it was there. So again, it is a lot of things that we don't realize are internalized in us, that we have pushed down and we have suppressed deep down, that we don't even realize that this stuff is manifesting now in a way that we don't recognize, or we refuse to recognize, and it's affecting the people we say we love. So again, therapy, it will work if you let it, but you have to be honest with yourself first. Do I want to change? Because if you don't want to change, then therapy ain't gonna work.
Nothing gonna work. So Carla said, what if they go to counseling, but the behavior still exists, just not as frequently? I think I would have to know more about the situation, because change is hard.
It is.
And you slip up, right? And sometimes you default. And so I wouldn't say that the person doesn't want to change or isn't committed to the process. Change is hard, and it's a lot of stuff. And so sometimes, you could be triggered, you could default back to that old stuff. It's residue, right? It's there. And so it takes work. And so it could be the person might need something more than what they're getting from counseling. We absolutely we're advocates for therapy, but before therapy, we had to come together in prayer, and really and get on the same page spiritually as well, before therapy could work for either of us. And so I think that there could be a lot at play. So I don't want to make a general statement about anybody's motives or intentions, but I know
I agree,
change is
Dr.
hard.
C. I agree. I agree.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes
Absolutely.
change is small. Change happens in small increments. You know what I'm saying? And again, um, marriage is not a destination. Marriage is a journey. So some parts of the journey you're gonna get there faster than others. Some are long stretches of highway. But again, it's work. And if you committed, that's something, that you got to really acknowledge, like, okay, so I don't know. You just really gotta, have that conversation. Like that's that at that point, if you get to that point with in your relationship with your spouse, I think that conversation has to happen. Like you really have to just sit down face to face, real close, and just one question. That's it. And when you finish that conversation after that question, I think that tells you everything that you need to know. Now, whether you want to believe it or recognize it, again, it's on you.
Well, we I was about to say something I can't. Oh, kind of to Tam's point, she said, give a little bit more grace as that person is changing. Um, Also, make sure that you focus your energy on what you want to see. And so, a lot of times, especially when we have been hurt or we feel a certain way towards our partner, it's very easy to harp on the slip ups, right? It's very easy to zero in and focus on, oh, there you go again. You didn't do it. You didn't ABC. You ABC. But what would it look like to instead focus your energy on acknowledging all the things that the partner is doing and trying and all the ways that they are growing? And so taking your energy and focusing it on the ways that you are seeing growth and change, and telling your partner how that makes you feel, right? We respond much better to that positive reinforcement than the negative. If you tell me, baby, I saw you today and it made me feel so good when you did ABC, and I appreciate you for saying this and doing this, and I know that it's hard, but I appreciate you for trying, and it makes me feel like you prioritize our marriage, and it makes me feel like you care about what happens to us and our family, and I appreciate you because I know it's hard. And so taking your energy and not focusing on what's going wrong in your relationship, yes, Tam, but really focusing on what that person is doing well. I remember the Holy Spirit spoke to me so clearly. We're gonna wrap up. We actually gonna do part 2, and we're gonna invite some guests to come have this conversation with us, because this was like this was the topic that we didn't even get through all of our points. So we definitely don't want to cut the conversation short. We're gonna come back with part 2 next week and have some guests join us. But I remember being that wife that was always like, you don't. And I was so hard on him, and like only thinking about what he's doing wrong, and only thinking about what he couldn't do, and wasn't doing. And I remember the Holy Spirit speaking to me so clearly, and it changed everything. The Holy Spirit said, "What must it feel like to be married to you?" I mean, sat me down and said, "What must it feel like to be married to you? To be married to someone where you don't ever do anything right. You can't ever do it right. You can't ever get it right. You can't." And I was like, "Oh my God." And it was so, I mean, It was humbling. And I was so sorry. You know, I was so broken because I was like, you're right. Like, all I have is negative for him. And so, what is he going to produce? What am I producing? I'm producing negative. We have to think on those things that are pure and that are lovely and that are of a good report and that are praiseworthy. Now, boundaries are real and forgiveness is real, but you also have to put your energy on what you want out of your relationship.
Balance.
Yes. And so, yeah, so we are going to, y'all, if you are watching the replay, make sure you put hashtag life in the gray in the comments. We do have our ultimate date night guide. It's pinned in the comments. It's a $7 steal, because you're not only going to get over 150 date night ideas across 13 categories, you're also going to get our Hearts Online guide, which helps you understand attachment style. So your attachment style, your spouse's, and then it shows you how to communicate and connect with them based on their attachment style. A lot of this, again, is from childhood and young adulthood, things that we haven't dealt with. So you get a 2-for-1 when you get that ultimate date night guide. So it's pinned in the comments. If you're interested in talking to us live, make sure you shoot us a message. We're going to come back next week with part 2 of Healing Grace. So anything else y'all want to say? You want to say?
I'm good. We'll see y'all next week for part 2.
Thank y'all for the love. Y'all make sure, please share this. Share this with somebody you love. And until next time, we signing out, y'all.
Peace.